Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to what is the latest of our Insights webinars that we hold here at Future Workforce, all around intelligent automation. My name is Alistair Roriston. I'm a Sales Director here at Future Workforce and your host for today's session. I'm really pleased to be joined by Andrzej Hruszkowski. And he can tell me off for getting it wrong because we've known him for a while and we should remember the names and go through from UiPath. Who's going to help us go over what is the ever-expanding UiPath platform and how each component of that works together and integrates and how people are taking advantage from that. So, Andrzej, good morning.
Good morning, Alistair. And don't worry about my name. I've lived with it my entire life. So I've lived with that since forever. So I'm used to it. Don't worry.
I have the same thing, all right, with Roriston. You can imagine it. And then whenever I've been to Romania, everybody's kind of looked at me and gone like that. And think, it's good. So Andrzej, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about what your role is within UiPath?
Okay, so I've been with UiPath for a bit over 4 years now, and I've done a bunch of stuff. My background is, well, engineering, if you're looking at studying stuff like that, but then sales, if you're looking at work history and stuff like that. So I kind of combined those and culminated in the role that I'm doing right now in the UiPath Immersion Labs. And in the labs, what we do is we organize events for customers, partners, internally and externally, and help participants realize the value of the fully automated enterprise. And we do that in a couple of ways. Presentation, conversations, such as the one that we're having right now. But we do live showcases, workshops, hands-on sessions, trainings, you name it, we have it. And my role is to organize, host, present, and except for the operational stuff, own these types of events. So that's what I'm doing. That's my role in the Immersion Lab.
Excellent, that's great. And for anybody out there who doesn't know about the immersion labs, there are now 3 immersion labs across the world from UiPath. These are, and having been, I know what the experience is like and with clients, this is not only about the capabilities within the platform today, but the ever-extending ecosystem that's being built around that, from connection into other applications, into further advancements in automations, to interactions with chatbots and physical interactions with that lovely human head that's in the lab that talks away as well, and how that communicates and just shows you the expanse and capability that's being brought to us all with AI as well as automation as well. So with that, thanks once again for joining us, Andrzej. And I'm really excited to sort of talk about some of the advancements, because certainly over the last 2 and a bit years, the platform has gone from something very, very basic in terms of some robots, some studio to develop it, and an orchestrator to manage it all, to now this really diverse cloud, on-prem, mixed-prem advancement of systems, and a whole ecosystem of applications that's just growing into each of you. And then, of course, there's 5 tenets, key tenets within that platform. We talk about discovery, we talk about build, we talk about manage, we talk about engage, and of course at the center of that is run, which is the bots themselves running that, and the ecosystem around of services and things and governance you put around that. So perhaps we kind of should start with those tenets and really sort of pass it on to you to sort of give an overview of where they all sit now, and how they begin, the sort of very beginning edge of some of that technology, and where the new starting point is for people, because it isn't just at studio and building bots.
Yeah, so as you said, right, you're part of this, part of UiPath, so you know that our software suite, if you can call it a suite, was relatively simple. What we want to do is build RPA in the beginning, right? It was all about RPA, and our vision for our software were, let's build it, let's run it, and let's manage it, and that's it, right? And we had one piece to build it, one piece to manage it, and one piece to run. Well, actually, 2 pieces to run it, right? 10 and unattended robots. Yeah. But then RPA became popular, right? And people started implementing it. People started seeing the value. And with that came a lot of questions from customers. Okay, but what do I automate, right? And then how do I automate it? And then how do I measure what I automated? And then we had to keep going and keep inventing and bringing in applications and software and concepts and processes that would help us answer all of these questions. And that's where discovery came from, right? Process mining, task mining, which we're going to talk about. That's where measuring insights, so we can look at return on investments. That's where Automation Hub came from questions from customers and partners and clients, right? From conversations such as these. So what we do is we look at what our customers do, we talk to them, and that's where this whole platform came from conversations such as this.
Excellent. And has that developed because, and sorry, it's a good point. And I'm just thought of another question of just straight away if we come to one. So when we talk about that and we talk about customer feedback, and you're right, I've been part of that when we brought customers out into the lab and things we've done, or we've been part of that, I should say. What are the things that have stood out really that have seen actually this is like a quantum leap for us? This was because you'll get that tidal wave of requests that you suddenly realise that actually this is key areas that we need to invest in. So what have you seen? Where did that tidal wave kind of start, and where is it now pushing you?
Oh, so there are a couple of examples, like automation, for example. So Automation Hub, for example, is a product that came directly from customer feedback, right? Because we had RPA and people were trying to get ideas to find out what to automate. We had people who were really excited about RPA and they really wanted to get into it. But when you start an implementation with a team, you have some ideas in the beginning and then you implement them and then you kind of run out, and maybe you have one more and then you run out. And we had customers, we were talking with them and they wanted to get ideas from everyone else. And even us in UiPath, right? We were building our product, but we were also trying to eat our own dog food and build our own automations. And we had to figure out how to centralize this. And we started out with Excel, right? Putting ideas in Excel and then building columns. And then, we thought this can be done better, right? Somehow. And that's how Automation Hub came to be. So Automation Hub is a place where the entire company can submit ideas, and the center of excellence, the people managing the automation implementation program, can evaluate them. You have automatic return on investment calculators, automation scores, how feasible the ideas are, and you can manage this whole implementation, right? And this has been a great success, saving a lot of time and generating a lot of ideas. And even for us internally, right? We have thousands, maybe not thousands, over 1,000 ideas submitted through Automation Hub, right? So this has been a kind of like a big wave on two fronts: internally for us to get better, and then externally for our clients to help them implement, right? And scale. That's going to be a key word today, by the way, scale.
That's good. So we see that, and we've used it ourselves with clients, right? And certainly in the engagements that we've had, either where we've been the outsourced center of excellence, or where we've been a hybrid model where we're training them and bringing them up, or we've simply used it as the first parts of workshops, right? So automation workshops and organizations, and it is, you're right, it's great. So a little bit on Automation Hub, you mentioned about some of the metrics and KPIs in there. Can they be specific and then delivered for the clients themselves? Can they set their own specific metrics within that, or is it pre-built? Is it pre-built and they just to give you measurements and therefore you can make your own decisions from that?
So when you would first implement Automation Hub, it would come with some pre-populated metrics, fields, options, right? So you don't start from scratch, but everything is fully customizable. Excellent. And even, you wouldn't customize everything. You wouldn't put it in all the metrics. And I can show you. We can go through a bit of a discovery journey, and I can show you.
That's a good point. Why don't we do that? And funny enough, that was going to be leading to my next question, which is, let's start at the beginning, right? So let's start discovering right this way. So
when you put in, just to finish this question, and we'll jump into our journey, right? When you look at a process to automate and put in an idea, you bring in the person, the subject matter expert, and the business analyst who's analyzing the process, and they would look at the metrics of those processes, right? So how much does an FTE cost? How much time does it take to run the process? How much volume is there? And then you'd put all that information there, and Automation Hub will calculate everything and give you a return on investment.
Brilliant.
Charts and graphs and everything.
Yeah, and the fact that it's made on your own, it's on your own information, right? So we always forgive me, but we're always the cynic, right? Never believe the vendors what they actually tell you and put in paper. It's what's important to you, right? So you've got to make this on your decision. So the ability to be able to do that on your own information and your own measurements and your own specifics to get you the true ROI is vital. Yes, agree. And it's a great tool, as you say.
Yeah. And you know, as I was speaking, right, I was thinking of other examples, because you were talking about waves, and Automation Hub is one, and it's at the beginning and we can talk about it. But we can also talk a bit later, after we talk about discovery, about document understanding, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that was a big game changer in the automation space. But let's start with the discovery, right? Shall we?
Yeah. So I'm going to hand this straight over to you as a product expert, and say, okay, let's look at those subtenants and software applications within the discovery settings. Discovery tenants, I should say.
Yeah. You'll need to let me share my screen. You know, that's one of the most popular phrases for a few years back.
You should be able to, participants, Andre, make code. You are now the host. You have control.
Okay. Then let's look at what we're going to look at. So this is the UiPath platform over here. Now, we've talked about it. It's gotten a bit complex because we have a lot of solutions, a lot to offer. And what we're going to look at is the magenta part on the left, the discover phase. And if you look there are 4 products in there: Automation Hub, Task Capture, Process Mining, and Task Mining. And we're going to see how they work together. And this is, and we call this our vision for automation discovery, because it's all integrated and all working together, people and solutions and everything. It saves time and it looks really good. So I really like showing this journey, right? So we're going to focus on the discovery phase for now. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to use this special kind of presentation, which is in Figma. So we can click through it. Now, since we're looking at a journey, we're not only looking at products, we're looking at personas, at people. People are actually working, so people are involved in the automation landscape. We're not just talking about product, software, and math, right? So we have a couple of roles. We have Robert, who's our business analyst. We have Beth, who's our automation champion. Beth is part of the Center of Excellence. We have Macy, who's not going to get the Center of Excellence, but is a subject matter expert, and Satya, who's an RPA developer. And we'll come back to their roles. And our journey starts with Robert. So Robert is a business analyst within the company, right? He can be internal, external, but his job is to look at processes and identify automation opportunities. And he'll be doing that in our showcase using process mining. So process mining is a tool that looks at the traces left by the applications that are already installed. So it looks at logs, at anything that the application does. It doesn't record, it looks at historical data, it analyzes it and gives this kind of spaghetti chart of the processes. It's auto-generated and it's really insightful. And Robert, our business analyst, would look at these types of processes that we've been analyzing and you'll see that, you know, for example, in this process, there's a bluer square here, right? And we can look at, this is the average throughput. The bluer it is, the longer it takes, and we can see it takes 19 minutes. And this is a very big bottleneck for us, right? This is a process that should be done in minutes, and it takes 19 minutes, right? Just requesting data. It sounds simple. So what he'll do is he'll send this to Automation Hub. Now, we're looking at the entire discovery journey, right? He's looking at it. He wants to start the automation journey, and he'll send this from process mining directly to Automation Hub. And before he does that, he needs to fill in some information about this process so that it can be evaluated, right? The digital input, structured data, the number of ways it can be completed, and stuff like that. It's not overly detailed because we're going to add that in the next step. And we're going to send this to Automation Hub. Now, since it's an Automation Hub, right? Beth, who is our automation champion and is managing the Center of Excellence, she gets an automatic email saying that there's a new request based on the data that we have in the system. Remember, this is standard data that is in the system. It has been put in there before because we have the users involved with this process already in Automation Hub, right? We have a savings per year. right? And an hour saved per year. And this is information that we've added in Automation Hub beforehand when we've built the user groups, when we built the application. So this is based on our information on how it works for us, right? So Beth wants to see this in Automation Hub, and she just does one click in the email and is switched automatically to Automation Hub. And here she can see the users involved who are assigned to this process, the estimate that's done automatically. And obviously she'll decide that, well, this looks like an interesting case for automation, but we do need more information. So she'll go to collaborators and she'll add a subject matter expert, which in our case is Macy, right? And write a comment for Macy, asking her to document the process. So Macy is now here. So Macy is a subject matter expert. Macy knows she's doing this process day by day. She knows what's going on. She knows this by heart. So she receives an email with a request to record the process. And she'll do so. She'll just click Launch Task Capture. Now, Task Capture is a solution that we have for recording processes. It does automatic screenshots and logging of the actions that you do on your machine. This is all visible on your machine. It's not run by anyone else. And you can see whenever she clicks Capture Process, she gets a pop-up on the right. So she always knows that it's recording and she can always stop it and run it at any time. So she'll click Start Capture and she'll go through the motions, which is clicking on the invoice, downloading it, and going to vendors and inputting the data, right? That was in the invoice. Once she's done, she'll stop the recording and she'll get a kind of like a Visio chart, but not Visio, obviously it's in Task Capture, but it looks like a process flow, right? Which is automatically built and contains the number of actions, the time it's sent, with screenshots, if you look on the right, and everything a business analyst and a developer would need to document and start building the automation. Once this is done, right, she'll need to add a couple of labels, like click on the vendors, a bit of description if she wants to. She'll just edit this and send it to Automation Hub. Again, everything is interconnected. Once this is done, Robert will get a notification, right? He'll get a notification that he needs to add some more details, right? This is a good candidate. We want to add the details. And these are the details that we were talking about, the process, so we can get the exact ROI and evaluate, right? Like the process peaks, the average number of steps, the number of ways to complete it, the environment stability, the profile, the data input, right? These are indicators that are added by the business analyst while having a conversation with the subject matter experts, right? So it's a continuous conversation. And Robert will add these indicators and will submit for assessment. Now that it has been submitted, we found out what we want to automate and the benefits of automating it. What we want to do now is find out how to automate it, right? So we use process mining to find out what, and we're going to use task mining to find out how. And while process mining works with traces of data from applications, so the logs and the traces that are left in the application that are already installed, task mining works with direct data recorded from users. So what Robert is going to do is going to go into task mining and start a new project. So from Automation Hub, on the same project, right, request data purchase to pay, I can start a task mining project. Robert's going to do that. He's going to add a project, name it, save it, and we need to send an invite. And we'll invite, if you remember in Automation Hub, we had a list of people who were added to this process, right? Because we have user groups and we know who work on this process. And we've added Macy and her colleagues, the people who are actually doing this process. And what will happen is they will receive an invite on their email address with buttons to either accept or reject this recorder and an installer, which looks kind of like Task Capture, but will run continuously to monitor their process. And then he's going to look at the settings. We can select the applications to record, right? So we can look at the PDF viewer, Excel, and Outlook. If these are the applications that we want to record, we don't need anything else. It's not going to return anything else, right? And we're going to go to the users. We can see that the invitations are still pending. right? And once they're done, we can select all of them and start the process, start the recording. Now, this is going to take a while. This gathers a lot of data. This works on all these users' machines. So after 5 days, we're going to have a lot of data to analyze, right? 99 gigabytes of data, a lot of process steps, a lot of screenshots, a lot of data sets to analyze. So we're going to start the analysis. And what it does is, in this analysis phase, we use machine learning to process the numbers and process the steps that everybody did and come up with a data set, right? A couple of tasks that the people have done. And we can see that task number 1 has been done by all 5 users, and it has the most number of traces. So this is the task that we want. And if we look at this task, right, this is all of the actions that have been taken on that task. And we can see that this path that you can see here on the right, the right one, is what we call a median or happy path, right? This is the most suitable path to automate. So now we know what steps we need to do to build a robot. And these are the actual steps. And a developer can take this and start automating, right? You know the exact steps, you know, you have screenshots, you have fields, you have recordings, you have everything you need to start automating. So we're just going to rename this as invoice to pay, and we're going to export it to Automation Hub. Once that's done, it's back to Beth, to our automation champion. And she can see an Automation Hub, and you can see this is one of the dashboards that's available in Automation Hub, right? We can see the ideas that we have by difficulty of automation and by the potential that it has, right? And we can see that our idea, the request data purchase to pay, has a very high priority, right? And we can see it's awaiting review, and this is the potential savings here underneath our menu, and we're going to approve from a COE standpoint.
And from those, just a quick question to go back actually on that. The matrix that's difficult, medium, and easy or simple, is that set out by the client, or is that set out as based on the UiPath standard matrix?
So this is calculated based on an algorithm that we built, but the algorithm uses the data that was input by the BA, if you remember, in the beginning, right? How much of the processes of the documentation is structured, how much is unstructured, for example, right? Do you have access to the data digitally? Is this process repeatable? Is this a mature process? Do you have documentation, right? Those types of questions. And based on the answers to those questions, our algorithm decides if it's easy, medium, or difficult to automate. Does that make sense?
That's excellent. It's good because it gives you that filtering, because you know from old, all right, the traditional way of understanding all this is months of work with people in rooms, with post-it notes on walls, and with people who've probably left the organization that have IP for that bit of the process that nobody understands. And I think this is such an accelerant to getting there, to understanding the whole suite with here. Just takes months of work off.
So absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you know, so you've worked with a lot of implementation. 80% of the time spent in an automation implementation is spent deciding what to automate, right? Working with the subject matter experts, going step by step, clicking on stuff, having the BA, having the project manager, having the developer in calls, looking at what the person does. And then this time they click something, the next time they click something else. And you have to go back and redocument everything.
It's vital, and it's I go back to the early days of RPA and just 2 or 3 years ago, some of the processes that people wanted to start off on was so complex that actually it stalled programs significantly and didn't give them the returns that they wanted. And we still see some of that today in the greenfield, in people looking to pick the first processes they pick are actually the one with 64 sub-processes and really complicated.
Yes.
So we have to sort of stall it back a bit and go, actually, you need to look at the ones that are easier with the highest return on investment, and then get your journey started. And then once you got through, you can get to the more complex ones.
Right. And once you've added all of those in Automation Hub, for example, you can see them side by side and look at the return on investment or at the difficulty of implementation, right? Maybe you have a process that has great return on investment, right? Great value, but it will take so much time to implement that people will get tired of you talking about implementing this, and they'll just say, okay, this is not working, right? Even if the process is extremely valuable, right? So a good practice is to start with, as you said, those processes that maybe are simpler, that have a high value, but also can be implemented relatively easily, so that you can show your business, your stakeholders, your users that there's value there,
100%.
right? And then you can build on it.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. We see it so many times that we have to say no, just to say that's the wrong one. This is the right one. This will get you traction.
Right, and there's a great conversation here around scale. If we're talking about complex and simple processes, and about COE-led automation and citizen developer-led automation. So that this is a great conversation that I love having. It's if this were, let's look at our example. If this is a complex process, right, that needs an RPA developer, and if we approve it by COE, they would go to Automation Hub, add collaborators. And in this case, we're going to add Satya, who's a developer role. But if this were a simpler automation, a simpler task, Beth, our COE, could have just added a citizen developer. So a person with no programming experience, right?
100%. To give everybody an example of that, of a joint customer. So the London Stock Exchange Group have adopted this exactly, right? So they have a limit, a bottom limit of FTA savings that the COE does not go to, right? And that is where they put the citizen developer program, and we're in training with the citizen developer program to say, here you go, here is a tool. This is how you use it. And as we'll see, the build is drop and drag and everything else. So to caption it and using this tool. So making it easier, and they're driving it. And I can think of actually a really good example just from my own UiPath days was Singtel. Singtel has massively done that. And I'll never forget the 65-year-old lady that got trained and suddenly is automating everything she can do. It's a great story, and it really brings a new skill set to your workforce, and particularly in this great age of, where we are, particularly, the great migration, the great resignation, whatever you want to refer it to. Actually having people within those skills, having the skill sets within that workforce already, and being able to do it is just going to help you on that journey as an organization. So yeah, it's a whole different conversation as a developer. We're probably going to do a separate session on it, so we'll get involved in that one. So go from there. Okay, so this is where we've talked about now, is we've really talked about what essentially has been discovery, and people are set off on their journey now, and the RPA developer. And I'm just thinking our time together as well is we're running at half an hour at the moment. So let's just take that forward. So once we move out of discovery and we're actually going to build, and build is a very different thing, because obviously we started off with just Studio a few years back, which began, originally it was still coding, then it became, low to no code, and now it really is kind of no code for people to be able to chop and jam some of the opens. And that's also been given some additional advantages, and we talked about some of the things like document planning and everything else that come into that. So maybe we move into that and just have a talk about build, all right, and build yourself.
Right. So as we talked about, right, build is a core pillar of our platform, right? Because when you invest in automation, you need to build it.
Yeah.
So that was one of our biggest, some of the biggest investments were done there, so that we can build easier, faster, and more advanced. Right. And if we look at our platform, at the vision that we have for our platform, right? The build phase has kind of 4 core solutions. Right? The Studio family. The Studio is kind of our IDE, if you will. Right? The canvas, the tool that you use to build the automation, and Studio is built into 2 actual products. There is Studio and Studio X. Studio is, I can actually show you. Let me show you a bit about Studio. So Studio is meant for RPA developers, and it's meant for RPA developers, but it's still a kind of visual tool. They don't write code. They can integrate code and integrate in the automation, but it's still built for developers. You still have to know about variables. You still have to have a mindset of programming. Even if you're not an experienced programmer, you still have to have that knowledge base.
Yeah.
Right. But it's an easy to use tool. You can't drag and drop, and with all the integrations, you have everything you need. And then there's Studio X. And Studio X is built for a completely different type of user. Studio X is built for a person with no programming experience. It's built for what we call citizen developers or business users, right? And this is built with no coding experience. So you don't have to know what a variable is. You don't have to know anything, right? You just drag and drop. And even the wording that's in this tool is meant for people who have never worked with automation before, right? Like, we don't sell in Studio. You would have a Excel application scope, right? And you would use that activity as a room or a container in which you'd build automations relating to Excel. In Studio X, that is called use Excel file, right? So we try to make it as easy as possible. And in the background, it does use variables, but you won't see the word variable in Studio X. You'll see a button that says save for later. And then when you want to use it, you just go to a plus sign and say, this is what you saved for later. Do you want to use anything from here? So it's extremely easy, extremely fluid to use. Obviously, there's a bit of a learning curve with any tool, right? If you give someone an Excel for the first time, you probably won't be able to build pivot tables and macros and VLOOKUPs and stuff like that, but they probably will be able to color the cells and so on. But the learning curve is so much better and so much faster.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more, having used it, right? And I'm not an RPA developer, but my view is if I can use it, then anybody can use this. So it's gone. And I'm actually trying to get my kids to use it as well, so that they can start to build a lot more in terms of automations for things while they're studying at university. Because you imagine having been able to automate all of your repository for all of your research and everything else, and have all that opened and everything else. Great advantage, and it gets them into starting to use it in value skills for the workforce. So that's Studio X as well, and some great customer names on there. So do you want to talk us through this?
So, like I said, one of the keywords here is scale. And you can scale in a couple of ways. One of them is scale your center of excellence, build up your automation team, and look at very high value and complex automations. And you'll get those high valued automations that have great potential. But, and you gave this example earlier, right? You'll have those processes, those ideas that are maybe underneath the threshold, maybe a lower FTE count savings, maybe not so repeatable. But what you don't see, so you have these high value, what you don't see is that there are so much more of these smaller automations than there are of those higher value ones, right? So they are so much more, and they add up to an incredible amount, right? So imagine that if you have one developer, you maybe have 20, 30 automation users. But the thing is, a developer needs to be trained. They need experience. And if you have one citizen developer, you get 10 automation users per citizen developer. But the trick is you can have a lot more citizen developers than you do automations. They don't have to be full-time. They can do this part-time, right? So the savings and the impact that having, and this is part of our Robot for Every Person initiative, that having citizen developers build automation is massive, and that's one way to scale. And we've had, as you can see, some logos here. A lot of people are very excited, and we have people asking us, and they have different names for them. Robot for on every desk, a business user, RPA ambassador. People have different names for these types of people, but everyone is interested in that. And the savings that we've seen and the impact that we've seen is massive. And the nice thing is that automations that are built by citizen developers are also governed by the Center of Excellence. So you don't have people building automations that kind of use password in a text format, right? Passwords are hidden. You don't have automations that sends emails to people who shouldn't receive them. You don't have automations that send information outside externally in any way. So it's fully governed and fully controlled by your center of excellence. And you have this workflow analyzer. When you build something with Studio X, you don't even have to give them the ability to run an automation without making sure that they run through the checks that you've set. Right? And this is all available and all manageable in Automation Cloud and in Automation Ops. It's what it's called.
Okay. So let's just that's great. And I think this is the one I think is the one you touched on earlier. I think this is the one that is the game changer.
Okay, so document understanding came again, conversation with a lot of customers, and we found that one of the most automatable departments in any company is finance and accounting, right? And part of finance and accounting, we have invoices and POs, bills. So a lot of documentation, physical, digital, but a lot of documents. And we started working with them, right? In the beginning, working with documents meant OCR, building templates. But that kind of reached a limitation, right? When you have customers that have thousands of suppliers or of customers themselves, and each of them has a different type of invoice, it's difficult to build a template for each of those. So what our document understanding is, it's a framework that provides you with the tools necessary to automate documents without building templates. So what it does is it uses machine learning to classify documents, right? So when I say documents, I don't mean just invoices, right? We have pre-built models, machine learning models, so AI that classify invoices, purchase orders, utility bills, IDs, the supplier forms, and we're working on a bunch more. And these will be, what that means is that the robot will look at a document and it'll decide by itself if this is a receipt, an invoice, or a utility bill. And afterwards, we have pre-built models, again, that extract the data that is in the documents without building a template. So it knows, as a human would, right? So if you, Alistair, will look at a document you've never seen before, an invoice you've never seen before, you'd be able to look at it and see, okay, this is where the name usually is. Okay, so this is the name, this is the address, these are the totals, and they look fine. This is, if you add them up in your head, they look fine, roughly, and that's how it is, right? But teaching a robot to do that is extremely complicated. So what we did is we had our robots process thousands of invoices and thousands of receipts and thousands of utility bills to build these machine learning models to have the robots understand the document, hence the name document understanding. And this is a step, though. So I'm not sure if you've seen Daniel's, our CEO's vision of robot understanding. So his vision is that you'll tell a robot to do something and you won't need to build the steps. The robot will just understand and automate it itself. This is a step in that direction. And I know I maybe said some advanced stuff here, like, machine learning and how do you use it? And that's fine. But the fact that all of these are pre-built mean that if you open Studio, all you have to do is drag and drop one activity to process your document using document understanding, right? And then it's that easy, right? So that's why it's in the build phase. We use it to build so much faster and so much more accurate, and it's incredible. Document understanding has been a game changer, and this is one of the most requested frameworks and types of automation in automation history, right? People in any department, in any type of company work with documents.
We're seeing it all the time, and particularly with organizations that still got manual checks, right? For invoice payments, or even doing tax returns, even doing reporting back, financial reporting back, right? And various things. There's lots of involved in that, but that's not just that. There's joiners, movers, leavers, forms that come in around that. There's understanding, I can think the healthcare environment, the ability to understand that, and notes and various things and sections and how quickly that can be adjusted. we're getting it all the time. And then that's what's fueling, by the way, the more complex automation processes in your automation hub, because people see the ability. But it does work, and it works really well. And we're seeing it right across the board, because our client base right across Europe, whether that's with some of the large retailers, organizations, or the financial institutions. There are areas, you're right, around finance being the first one, but there's a lot more behind that as well.
Right, that's where it started, right? So document understanding, because of invoices, to be honest. Everybody uses invoices, process invoice. That's where it started. Absolutely. And because we've built this framework, right, we've seen customers able to deploy a document understanding process within weeks, right? Obviously, right, disclaimer, not all processes are equal, right? So it's not to say that I'll buy document understanding, I'll have a process in 2 weeks. That's not the case. You might have a process in 2 weeks, depending on your process. You might have something more complex, so it might take a long time. But we have seen customers deploy it within weeks, right? With the appropriate asterisks there.
Absolutely. And I think that also feeds into marketplaces as well, because people are beginning, you've got some presets there, but with the biggest community going, right? So in terms of the RPA space globally, the ability to put some of the pre-built automations on there that people can utilize, not only from a citizen developer piece, but there are some more complex ones that certainly on marketplace, that are really good foundation and starting point for a lot of companies. Again, that accelerating their journey.
Absolutely. So again, our core idea is getting it in place faster and easier, right? And stable, right? So you don't have to build activities by yourselves. We have this marketplace, and this is open, this is public. A lot of automations are free. A lot of our automations have been checked and verified by UiPath, right? We have partners who have uploaded activities, so there are a lot of them, a lot to use. And honestly, I'm not a developer, but I've used some of these activities because I'm also automating some of my work, like building content and generating videos and so on. But interesting thing is, you can have a marketplace internally for your own company. Yeah. So you can build reusable components that are available to you. So for example, logging into an application in SAP, you might have your own deployment of SAP. And I just said SAP off the top of my head, but you can be any application. But you might have a specific deployment of that application, right? And you have to log into it in a specific way. You can build that component, upload it in Automation Hub, so your own marketplace. And every time you have a process that needs to log into that application, you can use that component, and this will save you a lot of time when building new automation, when scaling up, right? Like I said, scale.
Absolutely. And I can think of one particular example. We've utilized that with a customer. I thought they were a customer that actually started one of the most complex processes that they could find. But they wanted to do it because it was the biggest return, and therefore they wanted it. But the beauty of it was to having those reusable components for the next 3 processes really reduce those down from being complex to being medium. And in one point, simple. And you're right, the first one takes longer, but the next ones will take shorter and shorter time delivery. Those reusable components are vital.
Right. And the marketplace also brings something which you kind of need to realize or be told, that the processes, the automations themselves are modular. So if you build a process, right, like we talked in the beginning, maybe you're not looking at the entire big automation scope. You're taking something smaller, but if you want to upgrade it at some point, you don't have to rebuild the entire automation. You can just add another small automation in front that triggers the old automation. Right, and then you can add another one, and then you can add another one. So it's modular in that way. So scaling gets a lot easier because you don't have to rebuild.
No, and it's great that the customers and the partners are putting into this as well. And this is the bit, integration services as well. Again, another unique.
Yes, so we've acquired a company called Cloud Elements, which basically makes API integrations, drag and drop. So what we're doing is, if you want to directly integrate with applications, so when automating, you can go in a couple of ways. You can automate using user interface, you can automate using the activities or direct integrations, or you can automate using APIs. And we want to make that integration using APIs as easy as drag and drop. So that's the purpose, right? Again, so that we can scale faster, so that we don't have to spend time on doing the work that we don't like to, right? People don't really like building automation. We like using them, but we want to make that easier and faster. And we have pre-built connectors for all of the most commonly used applications in business. And we're continuously adding to that catalog, right? To make implementations faster, leaner, and easier to build.
No, it's certainly, for our own experience, it's certainly helping us to be able to deliver some of those automations in a lot quicker time frame than we would have done traditionally if we'd had to rebuild any of those APIs or build them ourselves. Okay, so this is again, we're seeing this from, as you say, all the major vendors now, Workday, SAP, your ServiceNow on there as well, all of the common applications. Have you, are there any particular customers you've seen that really scale? Because I can think of a couple of organizations that have really scaled their automations, like Allianz and Generali and people like that we've been dealing with, and Paddy Power and so forth, for a couple of others. And this has all helped. Is there any other sort of really good examples you could give where this has really helped a COE team, really move quickly?
Well, we've had a lot of customers now for the past year. The conversation that we've been having with 80% of our customers in the lab, right? So we've had hundreds of events with hundreds of customers. The key conversation that we've had is around scale, right? And people want to accomplish it in different ways. So even if we look at specific examples, everyone who wants to scale is looking at the integration service and is using it, because it's a no-brainer, right?
100%.
If you want to do it faster, and you can't scale if you lose time in the development process, right? And we've had customers. I have some really good customers, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to say.
No, that's fine. It's okay.
I know.
It's okay. If they're not joint customers, we don't talk about it, right? But it's all good to get that information. It's something we've seen, and we can comment on it as well as we consult with our clients as well. I'm really conscious of time as well, because we take a little bit of time to get the diversity bits in, and we've got manage and engage. The run bit, I'm not too worried, because there's only a couple of different types of bots, but it's really the manage and engage piece, because particularly test manager. I mean, we talk about orchestrator being the manager. It's. We jokingly call it, this is your HR management platform, right, for the digital workers. But really the new ones I see in Insights, obviously, but Test Manager and AI Creator, AI Center are two that I think are really fundamental in this management piece as well.
Right. So when we talk about Test Manager and Test Suite, we talk about continuous integration, right? Yeah. And we do that because, again, scale. When you build, so you have an automation implementation, you've built something and you want to go further, right? You want to start building more. But your developers end up having to maintain the things that they've already built, right? And that acts as a blocker to you scaling, right? Because you have your developers caught up in actually doing support. And this is where Test Suite and Test Manager come in, right? It uses Studio and Orchestrator and the actual Test Manager to keep an eye on the implementations that you already have. And keep in mind that this works with automation, right? Who better to test automations than a robot? But this can also be used for application testing, right? So you can test applications that you've deployed, implemented, that have nothing to do with automation. Well, if you think about it conceptually, an application is an automation of a task, but let's not go into down that rabbit hole. So What Test Suite allows you to do is continuously integrate and scale by giving you a platform to make sure that what you've already done is up and working and verifying. And that's as kind of high level as I can bring it. Obviously, Test Suite is a very advanced tool, so you'd need advanced developers to work with it, and advanced knowledge, but it gives you a resilient robot workforce or application, and it's incredibly important to scaling up your automation.
Yeah. No, and we get it. And we're seeing the wider use actually of test scenarios for application deployment. Yeah, and you touched on a great point there, because there's an awful lot of history for organizations that have run out applications or major program applications and not delivered on time, not deliver what they want, and not through this. And a lot of that, if they can reduce the automation testing to help get that better and better and better refined, will shorten the time for delivery, will shorten the issue logs that they end up having through deployment. We'll be able to get them to focus on that key point of when it's deploying and rolling it out, and getting it on time, on budget, preferably under budget for most FDs or CFOs. All right. And more importantly, adoption and take up, because there's not lots of bugs in it. I can think of a dinner conversation I had last night with my wife about the rollout of VDI in the hospital she works out, and the fact that everybody hates it, because it doesn't connect this or it isn't working, right? And they've got, a similar problem while rolling out a patient record system. And that's, that for them is £180 million project, for rolling out a big patient record system. And if you get that delayed or get it done or not happening, it's costing money, and it's taking money off of vital frontline care, right? So it's good. So Test Suite, it's interesting to see we've got VMware is an interesting one, right? So running as a customer, a software house running it, along with Orange and some others, it's there, and Cisco, they're brands that are producing products. So
yeah, so it obviously, if you work internally with it, you do need, if you want to scale, and these are some of the customers that, some of them are partners, but they're partners and customers, right? Like PwC, for example. If you want to scale, if you want to look at your automation, right? Again, reduce the maintenance and build faster and build smarter, and it's critically important to do that. And Test Suite offers a very easy and not easy, right? It's an advanced tool, but very comprehensive tool to do that. So I think we should move forward. What else do you want to talk about? I know we had a lot on the list, but I apologize. I get excited when I talk about things that I like, and I tend to speak too much. So
don't apologize for the passion. It's great. All right. It just tells you that it's a subject you've got to hold dear to your heart. And it is. You're changing the way organizations operate. And organizations have been through the biggest change of all for 2 years of the pandemic, having to switch to home working, now hybrid. Some still want to go back to the office, some still don't. We talked about earlier before the call. It's been a big change. We had a conversation this week with a client, that had to go and change from a completely in-house, on-premise educational program and examination process to everything being online, and that just threw them. They realized what they didn't have, and now they've realized how much they need to automate. The automation program got delayed, is now coming back into play because of all of these things. And of course, now with this tool suites right across the way, we can help accelerate things. So I think from a management perspective, orchestrator we talked about, test manager. Might be this AI Center is quite interesting because of the integration into AI. Insights we can talk about separately because at another time, I think, because that's just business information on what's going on, and again within how efficiency and your robots are working and everything else in WorkForce. But I think AI, it's worth touching a couple of minutes on AI Center.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about AI Center. When you talk to a machine learning consultant, a machine learning scientist, right? You talk to them and they'll get all excited about the algorithm that they've built, the data sets that they have, and they'll bring you into a lab and show you screens full of math and projections and results. But if you ask them how their amazing calculations project into real world, their whole grimace will change, right? Because it's math, right? And that's where AI Center comes in. So what we do is we give you a space where you can store, manage, train, and well, manage is a good word for it. Manage all of your what we call AI skills. So these are machine learning algorithms built by these machine learning scientists and consultants and very, very smart people. And you can use them in your automations as easy as drag and drop. Right? So you go to Studio, you choose an activity, use ML skills, select from a drop down the ML skills that you have in your orchestrator, in your AI center, and use that, and then give it the data. It gives you a result. And the neat part is that the robot can take action on the results of the AI analysis, right? So that's, for example, how document understanding works.
Yeah.
You give a robot some AI, and then it analyzes the document using ML stored in AI Center, and then it takes action. And that's the key part, right? AI Center is the brain, the robot's hands and feet, and they work together.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the whole point, everything integrates, right? Everything is a step in process. Okay, I'm going to cover off manage for the moment, and then we move into engage, because I think this is where we've got some exciting integrations going on from how we scale this out, particularly with apps, particularly with Action Center for Human in the Loop, and then obviously the integration with chatbots. So maybe we should just talk about high level some of these things as well.
Okay, so let's start with apps. Apps, as the name says, it's a solution for us to build in a low-code, no-code environment an application. And this is drag and drop. You connect it to different automations, and these apps are built to work with robots. So working with a robot might seem kind of overwhelming, right? You have to understand the RPA. But when you look at it and when you see it on the screen, right, this is a console. This is it looks like a normal application. It just has some information, but in the background, the robots that you have are working with a mainframe, for example, right? But you're seeing a dashboard that was built in a low-code, no-code environment. So this is a new way and a much easier way to interact with robots so that you can use automations a lot easier. You don't have to know what automation to run. You don't have to know what robot to run. You don't have to know what process to run. All you need to know is that if you want a loan approval, you just need to click the button that says start process, and the app will trigger all the relevant robots themselves.
Yeah. Right? So we've deployed this and utilized this for a couple of organizations and you're right, it's the trigger point, all right, for the process to start. And whether that's from a customer experience app that they've put out and done, or even it's as simple as booking time off on holidays, that then starts off and logs everything into Workday, but actually it's a much simpler frontage than some of the stuff that's coming out. And similarly, we get asked about it for CRMs and things like that, being able to pull data information out and it's a bit more advanced. But we've seen this in utilised against clients, and so have you. People have utilised this for in Canvas and so on and so forth. So again, it's that ability to quickly deploy, develop, and do something that makes that automation.
And the key point here is maybe there are applications, right, that kind of gather data and gives you access to multiple data sets from multiple applications. But the key point here, because you're using robots, you have access to applications that don't offer API integration. You have access to applications that on Citrix servers, for example, maybe you have sensitive information and you don't want to install anything on that server, right? So you're using a bot to get data through computer vision, and it can feed you the data over there from mainframes, from terminals, from core banking systems where you don't want anyone to have access, right? So you can get, or you don't want to build integrations with, right? You don't have to build a backdoor. You just build a bot to access it. So it gives you a way to access information a lot faster and have what we call a single pane of glass.
It is. I'm really apologetic to everybody. We are literally going to run out of time in a second, and it's going to cut off. And I think Action Centre is one of the things I'd like to pick up on, but we're not going to have time to really go into depths, unfortunately, because we are literally at the top of the hour coming through. So what I'd like to do is, I think, Andre, I'd like to ask you back, actually. Maybe we do a little bit of a separate session on some of these things, and because you haven't got the chance to copy the bots, but that passion you have, all right, for automation is clearly evident in the go through. And you really evidence to everybody out there that the platform is more than just bots, all right, doing jobs, more than RPA now, and go through. We haven't got any time for some questions either from the audience. There's a couple coming in. We will respond those back to you, and we'll set up a separate session. This has been recorded, and the session will be available on our YouTube channel over the coming days, and we'll be able to post that out to you. Andre, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, and I'm sorry we didn't get to cover everything, but that just means we need about 2 hours or 2 of these sessions. So I think we'll come to that and perhaps pick up some of the individual components in a bit more detail that we go through.
Absolutely.
And demonstrate those out. But in the meantime, thank you once again, and thanks to everyone for joining us this morning. I know it's always a trudge to get onto these webinars, but hopefully it's been really, really useful.
Yeah, and thank you as well. And was glad to be here. Glad to chat with you about this. I always love talking about automation RPA. So
we can see, and we love the lab behind. Andre, thanks so much, and farewell to everyone. I'm going to end it there. And thanks ever so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.